Hi everybody, this is Natalie. I am coming back to you guys. Ooh, camera just focus out of focus there. I'm going back to you guys with my second vlog. It is February, and so I decided to do this one on Black History Month. It's actually February 10th. Just a couple more days until Valentine's Day. It's kind of getting close to the middle of Black History Month, and I'll be the first to admit I don't really know much about Black history. It was never really taught to me, and I'm not quite sure if it's just because my teachers when I was younger weren't very knowledgeable on it themselves, possibly, or if it just wasn't really built into the educational system, and I'm kind of betting that it's a mixture of both. One of my things that I've noticed, it's become a bit of a pet peeve now that I've gotten older, is that my history books weren't really, I guess, diversified or integrated, so to say. I had a lot of American history about what white people were doing, about how the country was being built, and just a lot of major, really important events that happened in American history, which is great because you should know that stuff too, but it seemed like there wasn't very much about what all black people were doing that was positive until the Civil Rights Movement came along. And the Civil Rights Movement is like, the shining moment for black people to really, do something amazing in American history, but it's at the end of the history book. And anybody who's gone to school can definitely attest to, you don't always finish your textbook. In fact, a lot of times you don't even get to the last couple of chapters, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks of school, your teachers are rushing to try and get something in about those last couple of chapters. So I feel like I was really gypped in that K through 12 education system for Black history. And I think it definitely does kind of depend on the demographic of the school that you go to. I had the opportunity to go to 2 different high schools. One was predominantly black, and then one was predominantly white. And in the predominantly black school, there was a lot more emphasis on Black history. I wish there was more, but we definitely, honored it. There was, talk about it. There was mention about it. There was projects about it. And then when I changed high schools, Black History Month came along, and nobody talked about it. And instead of, having like a Martin Luther King Day event, there was a poster hung up, and that was it. People knew who he was, but nobody really did anything to honor him, and nobody did anything to really honor Black History Month. So it was very interesting. It was very kind of mixed. My emotions were mixed about that for a long time. But this year I decided I'm going to take it on myself, not blame other school systems or other people about my lack of knowledge. I'm going to take some of my income tax money when it comes in, hopefully sometime next week, and I'm going to buy a DVD set on Black history. And I think it'll be something that's going to be really interesting. I was looking at a couple of them on Amazon. They had a lot of different aspects of them. Some of them were on music, song, and dance. Some of them were just on straight history. They had like year breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, and it seemed like they had a lot more people in the videos than just the people who you always hear about, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X. I think they had more in-depth information, and so that's what I'm kind of looking for. I want to learn more about Black history than just the basic stuff that I've done projects on as a kid. And so I'm looking forward to getting back. So I think that'll be something that'll be pretty fun. I actually really enjoy watching history movies, and I wish that the History Channel would actually have more history documentaries, and they don't, which is a whole other thing. But since it's Black history and I am black, I think it's really important that black people take this time to look at their own personal history as well. And a couple of years ago, I actually had a class project to do a family tree, and I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't realize how hard it was going to actually be until I started doing it. I was only able to get back about 2 generations, and before that there was no real written history of my family, so I don't really know much about them. And even my grandparents' parents, I know their names. I don't really have many pictures of them up until recently, actually. So it's interesting now to know more about my own personal history, and I wanted to share some of that with you. So for my class project, this was the history book that I made on my own family tree, and I'm probably going to redo this because I've learned more about it in recent years, and now that there's a lot more photo editing software, I can actually make my family trees look a lot better. And so part of the class project was to just kind of document, I guess, some statistics about your family, when they were born, where they were born, you know, their age, when they died, where they lived, what their occupation was, stuff like that. For my family, it was pretty simple. My mom's family was from the Metro Detroit area in Michigan, and then my dad's side of the family was from Texarkana, Arkansas. And so that was pretty easy to figure out. Because I could just, you know, ask my parents about that, and they were able to give me a lot of information. After that, we were told to do a kind of a pedigree chart, and a pedigree chart is just to break down who was where, or who had who before you were born. And so I have it broken down like this, just kind of showing, if you guys can see it at all, if you guys can see it or not, it's kind of shiny, but it's just a regular pedigree chart showing where my family came from, pretty much. And then after that, we did a genealogram, and a genealogram is a little bit different from a pedigree because you get to see how many people were born and who's alive, who's passed away. It just kind of gives you like a huge chart of every single person's name. I'm going to try and show you this. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. Yep. And so this is on my mom's side of the family, and it was really interesting to do this because I realized that people had passed away and people had died on both sides of my family, but it wasn't until I actually did this genealogram that I realized how few people in my family were actually still alive. So I'm glad that I did this when I did this, because the few people who are older and who are still alive, I have the opportunity now to actually ask them questions and get more information. And I have done that, and I have a couple of like sticky notes and stuff like that in this book, just kind of showing my new notes, so when I redo this book eventually I can add those people in there. I did some family interviews as well, and I talked about, actually, you know, I asked my family stories, and I documented some of those stories. One thing that's kind of sad about Black history is that a lot of stories weren't passed along because nobody wrote them down. People didn't know how to read and write. Understandable. And so a lot of the who was related to who and different, I guess, just family stories just weren't really passed along unless they were oral history, and oral history can easily get lost from generation to generation. And so I actually had a pretty good grade on this project, if I remember correctly. It was a really good project to do because I feel like I got to connect with my family. And in the very back of the book, I got to actually put some pictures in. This house down here, that is the house that my dad and my dad's side of the family grew up in. And it looks, you know, kind of shabby now, obviously because it's an old house and the paint's falling off. But all of my dad's brothers and sisters were raised in that little tiny house, and I don't know how they did it. I mean, it's only having a couple of rooms and having a wood-burning stove, no central air, no central heat. I don't even know how they did it. But that was definitely really eye-opening to see. I mean, because I knew it, but it wasn't until I did this family tree, that I really had it all put into perspective for me. Now I actually appreciate it. Here's another picture of that same house. I did get to visit this house when I was younger. I can't really go in it anymore just because from what my dad told me when he was last there, it's kind of starting to fall in. and it's really just, you know, it's an old wood house and just basically starting to dry rot. When I was asking around and asking people about people in my family who had passed away, I was lucky enough to get, you know, some old photos, things like this. This is actually my Aunt Willamay, one of my dad's sisters. She actually died when I was very young from domestic violence. Now on my mom's side of the family, I have my grandfather and my grandmother. These were the two that were in Michigan, and I remember them the most because they were the ones who I hung out with the most. I remember my grandparents very, very well. They didn't die until I was a teenager. My grandmother's history is really kind of interesting because it's very clouded in smoke. There's a lot of questions. There's just questions, period. Nobody really knows what the heck is going on her side of the family. My mom, thankfully, found some old family photos from her side of the family and sent them to me. This is actually my mom and her two brothers when they were young, so that's kind of cool to see. My mom, she looks a lot like my grandmother, and I'm sure I'll probably look at a photo of me when I was a kid and compare it to them and think that I look the same as well. She dug up this picture as well, and this is kind of cool because this right here is my grandmother on her 20th birthday. Now, I have no idea who all these people are who are around her. I know that this lady right here is one of her sisters, and she died well before I was born. She died when my mom was young, so I never knew her and don't really know much about her at all. And then my grandmother never really talked about any of these people, so I never really knew much about them either. One of my grandmother's sisters, on her wedding day, my Aunt Helen, one of my Aunt Helens, I guess. I have a couple. But this man who's with her is my grandmother's father. And for a long time, here's another picture of my grandmother, my mom's side. She is extremely light-skinned. Take a look at me, my grandmother, very different shades of color. So for a long time, we kind of speculated and wondered if there was possibly a white person in the family. And from what my mom remembers being told to her when she was very young, is that my grandmother, her mother, was mixed between black and Native American, and her father was either mixed with white or possibly was white. So that's kind of interesting too. I definitely look a lot more like my dad's side of the family. So this is just some interesting stuff about my family's history. It's just something that I like. I find it really interesting. I'm kind of cool that my mom sent me these photos just so that I can see and compare and learn. And I'm going to definitely redo my family history book and put these photos in that book so that I can have some more, I guess, concrete documentation. So the next generation that comes on after me and in future generations of my family, hopefully they can look back and at least have some information about their family. I feel kind of bad that, and I wish that I could go back further and do some really in-depth searching into my family's personal history. I've tried doing a lot of the Ancestry.com. Unfortunately, it's not free. And being African American and being black, there's not much written down. There's not like, it's not like how if you were a white person and your family came over on a boat and went through Ellis Island. There's a document there showing that so and so came here this day this year on this boat. For black people, that's just not there. I have no idea where my family's ancestors came from, so I wish I could go back further and possibly research that. And you know, one day, I probably will, one day when I have the extra money, I think I'm going to try and do one of those cheek swabs. You may have heard of them, where they swab your cheek and take your mitochondrial DNA, and they can trace back through your mother where your family came from. And it only goes through females. Ironically, in our society, we take on the males' last names. Our DNA takes on the females' information. So I think I'll do that one day, and I believe it's about $100 or so to actually have that done. I've seen some of them through National Geographic and other places that have them. So I think I'm going to do that one day and just kind of trace back, if not to know a specific name of who was there, but to at least know possibly what region of Africa my family came from. Let's see, other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say about Black history right now. Like I said, I will come back with a video after I've had a chance to watch some Black history DVDs about history some more, and I will let you know what I found. Was the DVD interesting, and was it informative? Did I feel like I actually learned something? I'll definitely review that, and maybe you guys might be inspired to pick it up as well. So thank you for listening to this vlog, and I will be back again shortly with another one, hopefully. So thanks for tuning in.